Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Smart Cities Week. This is the very first session of the week, which we're very excited about. An action-packed week full of very interesting discussions that we hope will lead to action and impact across Australia and New Zealand and beyond. This morning's session, we'll be looking at how diversity and inclusion can impact the future of the digital construction industry. In a few moments, I'll hand over to Rebecca De Chicho from Women in BIM. But first, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the country that we're on. We begin today acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. And we all pay our respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So today's session, we'll get an overview of the global work undertaken by Women in BIM. Rebecca will discuss the impact of diversity in the construction landscape, touching on the wider goals of the United Nations sustainability agendas, as well as the challenges that we face as an industry to retain, advance, and support more women in the sector. The presentation will give a summary of the strategic initiatives of Women in BIM, which began as a UK-focused initiative and now acts as a global community supporting the uptake of BIM, digital engineering, and the wider digital landscape. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. I'll mute myself and hand over to Rebecca. Please feel free to use the chat section and we'll dive into all those questions at the end of the session. And a reminder that the session is recorded.
Thanks very much, and I'll begin shortly. So to begin with, I'd like to thank, obviously, the Smart Cities Council and all of those involved in the development of these types of events. If it weren't for these types of events, we wouldn't be able to share our knowledge and experience. So I do thank the organisers for the event. So today, as mentioned, I will discuss the work of Women in BIM in regard to the historical journey, the links to wider global issues, such as what the United Nations are trying to achieve in regard to their sustainable development goals, and then some of the work that we've been doing all over the world to support the uptake of digital, and that could be building information modelling, as mentioned, digital engineering, and even the, obviously, development of digital twins. I thought it'd be worthwhile just quickly introducing myself. For those of you who don't know me, I've been working back in Australia for the last 5 years, but I did spend a large portion of my career in the UK, hence why I was able to develop skills and expertise in building information modelling and digital processes based on the uptake of digital in the UK. My own business, Digital Node, which was founded in 2012 alongside the initiative Women in BIM, was very much an organisation focused on the uptake of digital across the construction sector, both on a strategic front, a practical front, and also education and training. Digital Node were recently acquired by advisory firm Oricon, and I say recently, it's actually been 2 years. How time flies, and now I act as a leader in the digital space in that organisation as the principal of digital enablement, offering insight and strategic initiatives and services, as well as project support in regard to digital. So I'd just quickly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, obviously, as per previous, and also pay respects to elders past, present, and future. To start with, what I'd really like to touch on is that Women in BIM isn't just a diversity group that comes together to support only the initiatives in one region. We act as a global community with women positioned all over the world, driving innovation, driving a collaborative approach, and the growth in skills. And this is because the work, and you'll hear a little bit more about this as I move through the presentation, the work that we do is to encourage and support more women into the sector, because obviously there are great challenges. We work together in unity, we collaborate, and we obviously all come together with one core ambition, and that is to grow, obviously, a wider, diverse landscape in the industry. But what is and why was Women in BIM an important initiative when it did come around. We've been around for approximately 10 years, and much of the work that we've undertaken in the last 10 years really came out of a response to the UK's government mandate. Being based in the UK, there was a very strong initiative, obviously funded by the UK government, to support how the construction sector and government as a client, as an asset procurer, could be more efficient with high ambitions such as lower costs, faster delivery, lower emission, and the improvement of exports. The reason why Women in BIM came about at this time, so the construction strategy released in 2011, Women in BIM founded in 2012, was there was a very direct or obvious lack of diversity in the sector, not just in the UK, but in terms of the work that I was doing over there. Essentially, the lack of women and the lack of skills in this space was very prominent, and therefore we came together, we formed a core team, and then obviously we launched what we call our database, which I'll get to a bit later. But essentially, as a response to what was going on over there in my work in the UK, there was very much a strong initiative. Also, with the development of the government-funded BIM task group, which now has kind of reiterated and become the UK BIM Alliance and the UK BIM Framework, we have a strong community over there which supports the initiatives, and we continue to grow all over the world. But the reason why the industry drivers were so important at this time and still today is that the uptake of BIM or digital, any form of digital across the sector, was poor. And we're still seeing issues across the industry with attrition rates and skills not being as well managed and as focused as they could be. And again, this is a global dilemma. These current skills gaps and shortages of people across the world really was a core driver for us, as well as some of the wider issues around gender equality, the gender pay gap, and obviously the access to education and career choices for young women in regions that are underrepresented. This is very important because we know that the construction industry will continue to grow. We know that there are obvious benefits to being involved in the construction industry, and we know that there is a strong push in regard to infrastructure, particularly in this region, residential and non-residential areas, as well as the growing population, which will continue to fuel the development of the built environment. The current crisis, and this data is essentially from many years ago, and we're still having the same issues in the construction industry where the productivity gap is still quite low. We need adequate and urgent reform in terms of developing digitization. And I only just had this conversation recently that we have seen great progress essentially in the industry, but just not enough as we'd like to see. The other area that I will continue to touch on through the presentation are the skills that are required. Nurturing people, not just women and men, and anybody involved in the construction sector to enable and grow a wider and diverse skill set is crucial, because the World Economic Forum essentially estimates that half the life of the average job skill is as little as 5 years. Essentially, that means that every 5 years we need to upskill, or that a skill will continue to change. And this is not just impacted by digital, but it is also impacted by the continuing changes across different sectors and different areas of the industry. Our industry does require radical change. We are seeing businesses grapple with that change essentially to try and manage data more efficiently. And with the influx of new technologies, obviously trying to manage different environments in terms of that process, it is very important to acknowledge that we need a diverse industry, because skills will continue to evolve much as the technology does. And I mentioned the depreciating asset of a skill, but also the uptake of different digital technologies will again continue to evolve. We've all heard, hopefully, of the concepts around Industry 4.0, which essentially is defined as a trend of automation and data exchange. Industry 4.0 was very much focused on manufacturing sector, but now is bleeding into the construction sector, where we are trying to understand the impact of the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, obviously using smart systems and smart technologies to be able to manage assets better. And this challenge will impact on how our future will demand different skills, how the different skill sets will need to be grown, because Industry 4.0 requires that we are connecting data across our business and sharing that data in a secure framework and intelligently, that data allows us to make decisions, and that obviously our computing power will need to be able to process that data to be able to allow us to work more efficiently. We know that with the policies around BIM and digital engineering in Australia and New Zealand and across the world, that this is starting to address some of these Industry 4.0 impacts, but there are other areas we need to address. And not only has the UK been at the forefront of that journey, but now with the uptake of different initiatives such as smart cities, as we know, and based on the next few days, you'll hear a lot about this, but also based on the digitisation of our digital assets, not only just the 3D models and the BIM processes that supplement those models, but also the uptake of the digital twin methodologies and the digital twin debate, which is very important in the construction landscape at the moment, because we are still trying to grapple with bringing in enough people to support our basic BIM/digital engineering processes, but also there is a wider confusion on the fact that the digital twin landscape is very much a new initiative, but the type of funding or the type of benefits that this can bring to organisation is very much starting to obviously affect our industry. And again, to adopt radical change, businesses have to think differently. And we know that we shouldn't be obviously bringing in people based on their background or gender, but we need to be focused on not just saying we're going to do something, but being people-centric. We know that all of the research suggests that many of the organizations that we work with across the world keep their people based on the fact that their people are happier working in environments where they are interactive, where they are flexible. We know that, where obviously the impact of COVID allows the organizational ecosystem to change, and also allow people to flourish and be able to have individual voices. Around diversity, the policies are there. We are seeing that particularly across the consulting and the digital environment sector, both in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and globally. But we aren't seeing enough of the policies around procurement and driving procurement processes and initiatives to support the way, obviously, that we would bring in new skills and the way that we would bring in new people to our organizations. These diversity policies and targets need to have a strong backbone, essentially, because digital targets need to be measured alongside diversity targets in organizations, and then they're just not being achieved as well as they could be. This leads us into the relevance of the United Nations sustainability goals. And we know that there are a number of different initiatives in place to support the way that the world, essentially, the global community, can come together and start to change the way that we think. In 2015, which is, now 7-8 years ago, there was a adoption of a policy around the sustainability agenda. It was encouraged to be adopted by all United Nations member states, Australia being one of them, and New Zealand, and providing a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity. At the heart of these goals is an important and an urgent call for action, and we know that the recognition of quite obviously critical areas of the way that we live, work, and interact with each other need to be addressed. For example, poverty, health, reducing inequality. All of these types of things will spur economic growth. And it's not just about where we are positioned in our offices or at home, wherever we're working today, but it's about acknowledging the different global dilemma. Because with Women in BIM, we have members and communities all over the world. We're not just about focusing on a certain area of the world. And this is why the United Nations Sustainable Goal 5 around gender equality is very important to us, because we are trying to initiate equal participation for women. We know that there is still a huge issue following the pandemic with the number of women essentially leaving the industry, the number of women that are not re-entering the industry after parenting duties, and the number of women that are not represented across government or private institutions in terms of the top levels, in terms of managerial positions. This goal also targets the fact that we need to be linking in to different levels of leadership, decision making. And we know that that is, from my perspective, having worked out of the UK, driven by policy. When policy is in place, it essentially then drips down to the entire industry, and the industry begins to take that seriously. We know that government, particularly in Australia, are spending billions of dollars in updating and upgrading or building entire infrastructure networks. So we know that there needs to be more focus on ensuring that the companies and the people that are supporting those projects are diverse, because the relevance to women in BIM is essentially to support gender equality, but also to ensure that we have access to opportunity, that there is visibility between different sectors of the world in terms of different regions and different access to skills. One of the things that I've been harping on about since the beginning of Women in BIM is to be able to essentially pull in from a number of different resources on a global level the different skills that we require, regardless of where those skills reside. For example, across different countries, different regions, different cities, but local, particularly in this region of the world, procurement negates that. So we need to change and try and change those areas and highlight those leaders. So I guess one of the things I wanted to also touch on today was really the details around what we've done, what the areas of interest might be. Sorry about that. Siri's not being nice to me. But I'm just going to, just quickly jump back to the presentation. So essentially Women in BIM's core themes are around three key areas. The first being attracting and promoting young women in industry. We know that there are many opportunities for young women to enter careers in the construction or the built environment in a digital factor. Many of our projects are looking at helping to attract and encourage young women to enter the industry. The middle tier is around the promotion and support of women, and obviously promoting women to either pivot or move into careers, and I'll get onto that shortly. And then the advancement, as per the previous discussion around the sustainable goals, and retainment of women. To be able to attract and encourage young women, we need to be focusing on the ability to be able to support and highlight leaders. And that comes through a number of different projects we have, drawing visibility to careers in digital construction, BIM, digital engineering, the uptake of digital twin, whatever it is. Will start to address our skills shortages. We're already seeing that happen across the industry. Promoting and supporting women in digital construction roles is really a core driver for us. And we have, as I've said, what we call a number of different people who act as regional leads. Regional leads are women in their particular country and city in the world, driving and promoting women in BIM to be able to support skills development. And then finally, the advancement and retainment of women and people in general is paramount importance to us because, again, as I mentioned, there are many people leaving and not re-entering due to their personal situations. And I guess the proof for us is in the growth of our network in terms of the way that we are growing. We have seen a huge uptake of our company page in the last 12 months. As you can see here on LinkedIn, many of our core drivers to be able to support the different regions come from our different the data that we analyze on our members across the world. We also have different communities that continue to grow. Every few months we have a new community across not only LinkedIn but in person, where we're seeing growth in regions like Scotland, Brazil, Portugal, and even Germany. Our regional leads span across different countries, 77 regional leads across 50 countries. Those regional leads support those three core drivers. We don't specifically highlight what projects our regional leads should be undertaking. We allow that openness and flexibility as long as the regional leads are aligning to the core drivers of Women in BIM. And again, all of these women and men are passionate about helping us to grow because we are seeing constant membership across different regions of the world and constant growth across the different regions. We know that in the UK, obviously we still have our highest level, but we are starting to grow in terms of other countries in the world. And we are seeing that our new members and followers are essentially now divided based on, the fact that we're driving it quite heavily over here in Australia and New Zealand and driving it quite heavily still in the UK. And our projects really are there to support the diversity piece. So the first project that came to play very early in the development of Women in BIM was the Women in BIM database, or the portal, where women have access to free resources to be able to locate women in their particular region to be able to find support to access any of our mentor scheme resources, which I'll get to shortly, and even to be able to access education and skills. So we have a education and training network where we partner with an organization to support discounts to local and online training courses. So it is very much about sharing, supporting, and allowing access to data. Our Women in BIM Mentor Scheme is our most successful project to date, and the aim of this scheme to begin with was to link women in different regions or the same country to be able to act as that support mechanism for young women in the world. We have seen that across the years, and we've just opened up applications for this year, and I'll get to that shortly. But the number of applicants each year continues to grow, again, reinforcing the need for this type of support. Our mentee and mentor applications are from countries all over the world, and we continue to make matches that form career-long relationships to act, again, for men and women to support the initiative as mentors and for young women to act as mentees. We've developed a number of resources, including our handbook, which obviously is all based on volunteer work, so none of us actually get paid for this. And we monitor our scheme constantly with our mentor handbooks, our record sheets. We act as support to all of our participants. And we also, due to the fact that we have a lower number of mentors always every year, we allow our mentees to come together in groups and host our group mentoring activities, which are, again, in different regions of the world. We're now hosting in English, Spanish, Portuguese. I think we might in another language, but we have a number of different people supporting that, again, all over the world, which is just wonderful. A couple of projects that we are starting to initiate this year, I guess, just to finish up on our presentation today, is a project that very passionate of mine around the type of language and the taxonomy and the type of way that we define roles and responsibilities across our projects. This came as a result of conversations not only in Australia and New Zealand, but in the UK, and essentially with all of our members in terms of being able to define your role, define your clearly executed responsibilities to that role, and then make sure that you're getting paid enough, essentially. And what we're finding is there is a huge gap in the different types of roles, the definitions of roles, and the different responsibilities associated to these roles. So we're about to release a survey where we start to look at the different roles that exist all over the world and how they can start to help us to bring together the disparity in regard to the global gender pay gap, which is still a huge issue and a major problem for our industry. Our second project we're starting to look at this year is the uptake of standardization. So we know that different countries around the world are looking to standardize their processes in regard to policy. And obviously with the release of the International Suite of Standards, ISO 19650, which is around information management principles, but we also know that there are other standards that have certification schemes around them, particularly around smart cities, which include ISO 37106. But this is about ISO 19650 and looking at how different countries have approached the application, because we are seeing, again, disparity across different regions of the world. We have monthly podcasts. We often share knowledge. We host webinars. We talk about current trends in different regions, personal stories and experiences. We have reports that are accessible, and then we also host events. And we haven't spoken about events, but we hosted our first flagship event in Melbourne in October of 2022, which was a great success. And if you are interested, please get in touch. But the support for women in BIM really is about bringing together that global community, ensuring there is visibility and support through engaging with different communities to support our organisations, our government partners, our clients in being diverse in not only who they bring in terms of organisations, but also the people and the thought leadership process. The diversity of thought discussion is very important for our industry because we are seeing that there is a rapid influx of change. Women in BIM are all volunteers. We also rely on sponsorship. We rely on people obviously giving their time to us, but we are looking for help. We're always looking for help to involve in key projects. Our global core team continues to grow with women, men, and non-binary represented people across our network. We respond to the requirements and the ambitions of people based on what they ask of us all over the world. And we continue to grow with the help of our sponsors. And I just thought I'd quickly mention those at the end of today's presentation. And we are looking at recruiting more sponsors this month. So please get in touch if you're interested. With that, I will finish there. And I would like to invite you to join us on our journey and to help us grow what could be and is starting to be a fantastic industry to work in regard to digitization. And I really thank the organisers for this month for allowing me to present our journey today. So thank you.